Hello, welcome everyone. Hi, welcome to another Game Design Variety Hour. Hi, Nicholas, welcome. Hi, Rob, and anyone else who is out there on this Friday afternoon, evening, whatever time in the world it is where you are. Thanks, Rish. Hey, how you going? Nice to see you. Yeah, I need to come up with a better catchphrase or something. It's it's always funny when you just go live, but you're still sitting in your attic or something. But if anyone has some good ideas, some catchphrases, then that I should take up, I'd be most welcome to. We also need to work out how to have some music in the kind of waiting room or like it at the start. This is a level of professionalism that is not seen in this stream, I'm afraid. So you'll have to go somewhere else if you're looking for that. But how's everyone going? How's the week been? All work and no play. Well, no, not too bad. It's been a bit of a busy week, or at least a very busy last couple of days with a lot of meetings and Zoom calls, and I'm sure everybody has a very similar experience of being trapped in Zoom calls. But I think I haven't had the experience of sort of back to back, which was yesterday. I think I had 3 or 4 things where I barely had like 5 minutes in between the meetings. So that was it was intense, and I was just helping to host for my research job. We started a webinar series about net zero, so for carbon capture technologies and social acceptability of carbon capture and things like that. If you're interested, there's a website called netzerowebinars.com. That's where we've got all the information. So there's going to be a series of 4 talks, and it was I've never had to host a Zoom seminar, and it's just like this cacophony of all these different panels with chats and different speakers and sharing screens, and like, oh gosh, it is what it is. Rob, blurry week for you. I don't know. What is a blurry week? I did manage to contact a few friends and collaborators, so that's something. Yeah, it's nice if you can get to the end and feel like you've at least not been by yourself all the time. It was a nice introduction with the music cover. I have to say, I'll tear back the curtain and say it comes with the Streamlabs. It's the kind of, they have one automatic kind of like 30-second counter that you see in other people's streams. They have like a customized sort of screen that counts down with the logo and the name and things like that. So it'd be nice to do that. Michael always has like some cool music coming in, so yeah, it'd be interesting. Hey Alex, how you going? Oh Alex, I looked at your puzzles after they were mentioned on Bez's stream. I have no idea how you're supposed to do them. I actually don't. I have never watched Only Connect, so I looked at a small clip to sort of. I mean, it's not a difficult premise, I guess, but that was new to me, and it was. Yeah, and then I looked at your examples of these quizzes, and yeah, I had no chance. I think for those who weren't there, Alex or Aquasaurus in the chat designs puzzles based on Only Connect. Feel free, Alex, to say in the chat what a better description. But because we were also talking about, I quite like numerical logic puzzles like Sudoku and variants and other things like that. And I even was at some point quite interested in getting into the design of not numerical logic puzzles if I needed another hobby. But there's actually apparently quite a good scene in the Czech Republic for that kind of thing. So yeah, it was something interesting I was looking into. So yeah, if anyone else has some favorite puzzles that they like to do, mention them in the chat. I'd definitely be quite interested to hear. I normally go on to, there's the Puzzle Grand Prix. There's also like a Sudoku Grand Prix, and they have like 8 events a year. And I don't compete because you have like a timed 2-hour session where you have to try and answer do as many of these puzzles as in like an hour and a half or something. But then they make the questions publicly available, or like the puzzles rather, so you can try them in your own time and at your own leisure, which is kind of nice. Alex, you're supposed to be able to sort the 16 clues into 4 groups with a central connection. Definitely for the enthusiasts. Yeah, so there's, if I remember rightly, that you get 16 boxes and each has I saw like a series of letters, basically. They weren't words. I guess they were initials, possibly, of words or acronyms or things like that. And yeah, you have to sort those 16 things into 4 separate groups with some connection. Nicholas, I tried to do some of the groups were rather difficult, although I found them well made. It was all on me. I like Only Connect. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's well, so yeah, we'll go out and check Alex's work. Hey Josh, how you going? Yep, go and get some tea. I have my Earl Grey already. Yeah, I definitely needed it after those webinars to kind of relax a bit. So yeah, today's stream might be. I have like a little bit of a plan in my head, but it's also going to be. I had a really busy last couple of days, so just as I said, a bit of game design and chill. When I figure out how to put like chill music in the background of these streams, I might do that. It might be a sort of a nice way to do that. Nicola, do you know the YouTube? Yeah, it's Cracking the Cryptic. Yeah, I actually did follow them before they kind of. I think there was one particular video, maybe it was a Sudoku with no digits that went viral, and suddenly they had a lot more followers. For those people who are interested in puzzles, Cracking Cryptic is great, and they do a lot of Sudoku, but they do occasionally cover non-Sudoku logic puzzles, which is the kind I like a lot more. There's actually a lot of good free apps as well that you can get for your phone to do these, which is quite fun. Alex says, I've applied to be on the show 3 times now. Okay, for Only Connect. So I guess, do they film a lot of it? Is it like once a week or every night? This is the Australian not being used to the kind of, because it's like a BBC institution. I'm guessing it's been going on for a very long time. So for fingers crossed, I guess. Nice to see someone else on Team Earl Grey. Yeah, we can get it in Australia, but it was only when I moved to England that for whatever reason I got addicted to it. Although I got told off in Cambridge that apparently I drink it wrong, that you shouldn't have it with milk. You should have it with lemon, if anyone really cares. I don't. But hey, Rory, how are you going? Welcome. Rory, I saw you're the Scada. I'm probably getting the name wrong. Your new game with ITB has been properly released now, right? I think I saw it on Twitter. So congrats for that. So everyone else, Roland Bones is Rory Muldoon. I hope I've got that right. And is a game designer as well, and just had his first game, Scorer, my bad, apologies. And it is your first published game, right? Release game, yep, I think. It's been out with from Inside the Box Games, so check it out. I know there's stuff on Twitter if you Google it or look it up on Board Game Geek. So congratulations, and that's really nice. Still on Only Connect, it's a tournament format. They shoot about 4 or 5 weeks in March. Oh, I see. Okay, so almost like University Challenge or something like that. Yeah, because they're teams, right? Yeah. Cool. Alex, a really striking art direction. Looks great. Yeah, I think Rory, did you do the art for? Yeah. So Rory's also an illustrator / graphic designer, and I think did the art and graphic design for Scorer. But correct me if I'm wrong. So if anyone is out there looking for a talented artist illustrator, then yeah, check out Rory's work. Yeah, so welcome all. Yeah, hope the week's been kind to you. Hope in your different situations that things are all right. Here in Prague, things are much of a muchness. I still know the inside of this room quite well. But yeah, it's not been too bad. I was going to sort of do a news or we can go back to the normal thing of a week in a game designer. Not like amazing pivotal news this week as it's pretty normal. I had some really encouraging meeting with some publishers with regards to some releases for next year, which I unfortunately can't talk about. But one, for example, talking about the new adventure game. So Phil and I are hard at work on the 6th scenario for the adventure games. 4th one has just come out in German. 5th one has been announced. It's going to be a crime noir theme for a bit more adult, 16 plus. And now we're working on what will probably be a much more family level entry in the series, and that hopefully will come out. We're hoping late next year. So we're starting the kind of early design work for that, working with Michael from Cosmos, and so we're chatting generally about the story arc and the different beats, how we're going to break it up into 3 parts? How do you have cliffhangers, at each of the different parts? But at the same time, simultaneously thinking about the mechanisms. What are we going to do that's a bit different? What elements do we want mechanically that might work? So yeah, it's sort of a fun. It's the fun moment where anything's possible, and it's going to be my job to do the first run at the first part in the coming weeks. It's one of these things that, as much as I like, collaboration is great, but it's interesting when you collaborate on games. It's hard sometimes to. There are some parts that I don't think you can collaborate on really, and usually it's when you do the first full version of a prototype, whether it's the first prototype iteration or another iteration. It's a thing sometimes you can't hold all the details in 2 heads at once. It's just too inefficient, and it just takes too long. And sometimes, especially with puzzle kind of games, only one head can kind of hold all the different details of the puzzle and why this clue is important that might lead on to that, and how do these parts fit together. So yeah, it usually ends up that even though it is a collaboration, one of us, in this case me, will take a first run at the whole thing to get like a fully fleshed out, prototype, and then we'll start editing and things like that. And that's kind of been the way of working on these sort of narrative games. Yeah, and it works pretty well, I would say. Yeah, so that was a nice bit of the week. For those who missed it, or I saw plenty of you in the chat, I was on Bez's stream yesterday, and we were talking about making money as a game designer. So I'd really encourage all of you to head over to Bez's channel. If you're not already following, please give her a follow. I'm sure they'd be really happy for that. And so it was a really interesting conversation, and there was still a lot that we could talk about. And I think I guess I can now. I could talk a little bit about maybe some things we didn't get to. I mentioned Rob Davio's presentation, and I've done it before on the channel in this Tabletop Network. I'd really recommend checking it out. It's interesting, the more you think about being a professional game designer, that it is a very lucky position to be in, and it's not something that gets talked about a lot. How you think about, it was an interesting point that Rob made. It was this idea of return on investment, which is a very kind of businessy kind of point. And it's, do you start thinking about possible ideas in terms of what's like the possible return you would get on that idea in terms of money, and how that kind of influences what games you might work on. This is interesting. Hey, Bram, how you going? Good morning over there. I guess you must be on the west coast of the US or something like that. That if I'm right, the way I remember time zones now is sometimes, it's not always, but it's partially from different publishers I work with. So I've got a game with AEG at the moment, and we're always meeting around this time or about an hour later because they're based on the west coast of North America. So it's that's how I kind of work out things. Oh, you're in Minnesota. Okay, cool. All right, excellent. Alex, yeah, so I guess chatting about the adventure games, how do you keep track of things? The short answer is not very well. They're working on an internal software system in Cosmos. I mean, it's not really a software system. It's going to be some way that it'll make it a lot easier to edit these scenarios as we iterate. It is a slightly complicated process. It's made more complicated because the first versions are always in German. But if we design them, if we write the first version, then we obviously write them in English. So there's always this translation problem that adds to every iteration. Like, we make a version, they have to translate it, then iterate it, and then it comes back and forward. You miss things on that that kind of Chinese whispers. There are even small changes that sort of get introduced. But yeah, it's really just a Word document where we'll put all the entries. I'll work on cards in Adobe Illustrator or something like that, and with really rough graphic design, nothing too amazing. But yeah, we don't have a good way of organizing it, and it does become a bit of a problem, to be honest. After a while, when we're in the middle of it, and you're up to version 8 or 9, and you don't know who's working on what, you don't know where the problems are. We're talking about an email, but that's something that we're trying to get better at. But of course, the interesting thing with these, and from the outside, these companies look like they have lots of employees and lots of time. But even the bigger companies, even like Cosmos, which is sort of a bigger company, it's enough work to just keep on top of the schedule of releases. Like, even if you're releasing 1 or 2 games of this style that so much work goes into them. You know, it's enough work just keeping on top of that, let alone putting in the time to like put in place systems that might make the future more easy. It's always funny. I know, I'm not sure if anyone does coding in the chat or anything like that, but I do that a little bit in academia, and I'm completely self-taught. And academic code is always terrible, really terribly commented. There's, you know, barely any manuals. You know, we're always about just trying to get it to work for the current problem, because I mean, often that might be the only time you're going to use it, even though, you know, in software you should think about, oh, I should set this up so that, you know, I put all the time into the first iteration, or the first time I have to put all the work in, but then the subsequent times I have to use it, you know, it takes me a fraction of the time. But yeah, we don't do that, and yeah, we have to get rid of that for the adventure games. So yeah, it's an interesting process. Alex says you're on AEG time. Yeah, well for now, I guess. Hi, Ro Reckless, how are you going? Welcome to the stream. Chatting a little bit about a week, or my week as a game designer, and going back a bit to Bez's stream and sort of making money as a designer. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of, like, I think Kickstarter, you know, I made the point of the stream, I think Kickstarter and narrative, or not even narrative, but I guess like single play games are really, I'd say, two of the more disruptive, I hate the word disruptive, but two of the biggest changes in the kind of like hobby industry in terms of the styles and types of games that are getting made and that keep selling, or there's sort of this viable model to make money from them. And, you know, I would say if you're a designer or a company trying to, you know, make a sustainable living, or to make reasonable returns on your games, I think those are the places to look at. It was interesting when I don't know when this happened on Kickstarter, and maybe those in chat can let me know, or when you really saw this thing changing. You know, we all, you know, you saw Kickstarter obviously started by, you know, I'm going to make this game, I need the money to do it. And I think even when you were successful at Kickstarter, always the goal was to go into distribution after you had a successful Kickstarter. So you kind of use the funds from Kickstarter to print enough copies for all the backers, but also an additional number of copies, which you can then put into distribution. And you'd hope that things do well enough in distribution that, you know, you can then keep printing into distribution without doing more Kickstarter. So the Kickstarter is only this sort of one-off thing. But now there seems to be a very accepted model where, you know, you don't need distribution at all. There are more and more companies that are making these big games, a bit like Monumental, which will never go to retail, essentially. And it's not even, you know, I think there's a part of it that it hopefully encourages people to back, and they want to, you know, there's a bit of that FOMO. You know, there's this thing that you're not going to get it another way. There's obviously higher margins through Kickstarter, but that it's a viable way to keep interest in a product, because you just have a second Kickstarter. You know, when you deliver the first one, then you have a second Kickstarter for an expansion or some other product. You build up. It's an easy way to build up lines, and it gets around this problem with expansions. You know, when you talk to companies about expansions, it's always difficult, because you have to have sort of a you know, a level playing field of sales for an expansion. You actually have to have rising sales of the base game, because the expansion is always going to have, you know, a decreased rate of sales with respect to the base game. So yeah, hey Paul, how you going? It's always tricky for Paul, because I know you're always planning a stream. Yeah, and hi to Loki too. I'm looking forward to. I'm now blanking on what your stream is, what you're playing tonight, because I just saw it and I know I was interested by it. It wasn't Hallertau. What do you? Oh, Anno 1800. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hopefully have a copy on the way from Cosmos, which I am very intrigued to try. So I definitely will be popping by. So yeah, pop by Paul's stream, 7 p.m. UK time. I hope I've got that right. Tell me if I'm wrong. Over on YouTube, Gaming Rules vids. Paul does great, you know, playthroughs and live streams. So check that out this evening. Yeah, so Kickstarter is sort of an interesting new model, and then there's One Play things, which, you know, again, it's much more like a subscription model or a serialized kind of version of games. I think you can target that kind of thing. Sometimes I think when I'm working on a system for a game, I think, can this be built out into multiple releases or multiple scenarios based on that scenario? It's something I'm definitely like a scheme I'm definitely designing in at the moment, and I've done more and more kind of narrative games. So it's interesting, and the adventure games. Actually, one interesting fun bit of news we got about the adventure games is they've just passed 250,000 copies sold of like all 4 products so far in Germany. They just passed it this month, so that's really cool. That's been about, the first ones were released. I guess it was only last year in like March, so that's kind of like 18 months. So yeah, it's nice. It's definitely the most I've ever sold of any of my games. So yeah, and still Christmas to come, and also there's that doesn't count other languages, English, French, and things like that. So yeah, so it's nice. I can buy an island next to mine, Hawaii. I look forward to it. Yeah, I definitely looking forward to a warmer climate after being in winter here. Alex asks, I've heard that releasing an expansion usually pushes sales of the base game. Do you think it's true for direct-to-consumer games? Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously with Kickstarters, actually, I think the most successful products on Kickstarter, at least for me looking in, with those subsequent Kickstarters for the expansion, the best ones actually really make way more money than even the first campaign. So you're not only bringing in people who want the expansion, you often bring in a lot more people who get the base game, or in fact get everything. Because again, it's just finding ways to bring games back into the public consciousness. That's promotion is just a bigger problem, or as much of the thing you're trying to do, and having another Kickstarter lets you have another bite at that pie, basically. And yeah, I think it definitely helps, and that's why it's helped so much with probably getting more expansions released for games than even in normal retail. Like, that's even harder now if you're going through distribution, because distribution is generally, what I hear, is much more is a lot harder to predict, and yeah, it's quite tricky. So yeah, no, thanks everyone for the congratulations. It's nice. It's a nice feeling, definitely. How everything's kind of worked out. Yeah, so I think I haven't got a great kind of presentation or anything, Chad, but the one thing, I had got a little bit of feedback that people liked hearing discussions of a particular kind of design mechanism or philosophy. So there was another one I was thinking about today, and we'll all explore it together, because I had a few brief thoughts, and it's what I've called decision horizon. So what I mean by decision horizon is really the concept of either usually a length of time or information, like a gap in time or information, where you have to make a decision in a game before you'll actually know maybe all the information you need to make that decision, or before you'll actually get to know the result of that decision. I guess it's related to feedback, so people talk about feedback loops in games, and how quickly do you get the feedback on each of the decisions you make. And that has the difference between sort of a tactical and a strategic game. Tactical games are very, moment-to-moment feedback. You make a decision, get feedback, decision. So it's very much in the moment. Strategic games, you make decisions right at the start. You might only see right at the end what the impact of them was. But I think one thing that comes up quite a bit when I start designing new games or think about new prototypes, it feels like something I try and consider early on in the process is what decisions am I asking my players to make? But what information do they have at their disposal when they make that decision? And is there going to be a decision that they really would have liked to have had at that moment that they either don't have, or will things sort of change in the game after they make the decision that might make them regret that? It's somewhat related to one of Brett's, so it's Brett Gilbert, a co-designer, one of his sort of pet peeves, and it's a little bit like what I was saying, and it's sort of any decision you have to make at the very start of the game where you kind of have no idea about the game. It's often related to how you're going to learn the game. So a case in point, it's not a fantastic decision, but any game where you need to, say, decide on a special character at the very start of the game, you're presented a choice of two things, or potentially you're given, say, 2 quests, or maybe you're given 4 quest cards and you have to choose 2, or something like this. There's a lot of decisions that in some strategic games which you're given at the very start of the game, And the problem is that often in your very first game, you have no information as to, you have no experience and often very little information as to understand what is a good decision. And it's not really a decision if you don't have any information to make that decision. It's the same as just making a random decision at that point. Yeah, and actually Paul makes a very good point, and I was going to say that, the best games that deal with this is that they say for your first game you do such and such, or you just don't give a choice to the players. There's a lot of games where or they give you a preset starting hand. So like Race for the Galaxy, one of my favorite games, in your very first game there are sets of hands numbered 1, 2, 3, and you get given I get number 1, and they're meant so that you don't have to make any decisions in your very first game. And I think that's something to always think about when you're designing a new game, to make sure you do this kind of thing if you're going to ask players, to do something. Yeah, exactly. So if you have to choose between 2 things at the start of the game, just give people 1 because they have no idea. But it's not just about decisions, like these kind of decisions that happen at the start of the game. The problem can be is when you have mechanisms or decisions that where a game, especially early on in the game, when a game will just, ask you to do something, and it's very hard to tell what the impact of that decision is. A particular kind of mechanism, and it's a little bit inspired, I was playtesting another designer's prototype this week. Anything that sort of depends on collective actions of players, I think is notoriously difficult for players to understand the consequences of those actions, even if they've experienced the game a lot. And things like area majority games, for example, I think can be notoriously difficult for players to feel like they're making positive decisions, that they feel like they know what the impact of them is going to be. It's and that's often exacerbated in terms of multiplayer area majority games. It's different when it's a 1v1 game because there's a certain tenseness to that, and you have one opponent. But any game where imagine an area majority game, and I might be I may be describing an exact game here, but imagine where you have to place one of your troops into one territory, and there are 5 territories, and one of those territories is going to score once it's filled up, and the first one that scores is going to have a particular effect. That cadence of what in which order those territories are going to score is dependent not just on your action, but you can think of that basically the game, or all the action in the game, if there are 3 players, there are going to be twice as many decisions not made by you as are made by you. And sometimes it can be really hard to feel like you have any agency in that, because you're only getting to affect the system a little bit compared to the cumulative effect of all the other players' decisions. And that is, it's not that one is right or wrong, but I feel like when I play prototypes that don't work, especially ones that are aimed at a lighter audience, or a light strategic family audience, I feel like it's one of the easiest traps to fall into, where you're asking players to make decisions that either they don't really have information or experience to make that decision, or that the cumulative actions of the rest of the players is too great compared to what their influence they have on the game, and it just means that it's players often will bounce off harder from those kind of systems, because you don't get, not only do it can be a negative kind of experience to do an action and see that it didn't make any sense later on, but the better strategic games, even if you make a wrong decision, you feel like, oh, okay, I see why that was not a good decision. I see that when I made that decision, had I considered A, B, and C, then, which were visible to me, I should have made this decision. And even though you feel bad that you didn't do so well, often actually there's a really positive thing connected to learning and growing in the game, getting mastery in the game. But if you feel like, well, but I didn't know that was going to happen, I didn't know A, B, and C, I could have not known that at all, so it stops it feeling strategic, and it just means that you're just left with that negative feeling. There's no positivity from sort of mastering the game or anything like that. So it's a sort of a slightly fuzzy concept, because it can relate to how quickly you get feedback on your decisions, or rather, what are you asking players to consider? How far ahead are you asking players to consider when they make a decision now? you know, and that's sort of tricky. Yeah, Manuel said that Tom Lehman did the same for Rez Arcana. Yeah, exactly. Again, there were sort of set hands, and that's a game that, you know, getting random cards is sort of part of the fun. But again, it's all you can do to kind of ease players into that first experience. Alex says sometimes it's nice to not have all the information. It means people won't be as tempted to math everything out. Yeah, I think I guess that's true. I think there's another topic to be sort of talked about in terms of, you know, like how much information do you give players to make the decision? And I was watching a Shut Up and Sit Down review of the 4X space game Eclipse, the second edition, which I think they just published this week. And Quinn's used the term of fuzziness. I think it was fuzziness, which was to do with how do you sort of obfuscate different systems so that players have to go by gut feeling rather than by sort of a mathematical, analytical meaning to everything. And that's true. And in these bigger games, having some, you know, I would say actually that's always a bit tricky as well, because there are definitely some players who really don't like that fuzziness feel. Like if you feel like I could math it out, but I can't because it's too complicated. I sometimes think that, you know, I sometimes think the difference in strategy games, or what we think of as heaviest versus light strategies, it's not about the choices that you have to make in those games or the breadth of strategies or even how things combine. It's really just about how hard the system is making it for you to understand it. You know, I think sometimes that's the difference between the really heavy strategy games and the lighter strategy games. It's just that there's just so many more labyrinth paths, or there's just so many more decisions. Not that they lead to vastly like many like a higher number of different outcomes. It's just harder to predict what they're going to do, or it requires, you know, more analytical processing power to sort of work through it. So yeah, I think for, you know, I guess for this Decision Horizon, it's not so much of that. I think it's more about the kind of resistance you can feel as a player if you feel like the game is asking you to make a decision that you can't, you know, even in simpler games, that you just simply, that there's either information that's just missing that's going to have a large impact on you, or that you're, you know, or that things you can possibly know will definitely come up later. And again, I think it's quite important to think about that in lighter games. I think in heavier games, it's not as much of a problem, because I think people are, you know, that audience is much more used to that kind of long-term planning. And also I think there's a more willingness to have a learning curve in those games, that, you know, in the first game, you're not going to know what's going on, and that you're more used to that, I think, that audiences for that. But for the sort of the lighter family style games, strategic games, I think it's really important to be aware of that. And sometimes you might have really interesting mechanical parts of a game, you know, that are the things that you love about the game. But this sort of decision horizon, this asking players to make decisions that aren't meaningful, or that it's hard to know what they are, I feel like that is a peril of those really interesting mechanical designs often, especially when you pitch them to other, you know, to that sort of lighter crowd or that audience. Now was saying, to me, heaviness is defined by how many steps between the thing you want and how to get to it. Yeah, I think that's a really good definition actually of heavy versus sort of light strategy game. The kind of game you're describing, I'll not enjoy that at all. I want to make informed decisions. Yeah, I mean, it's that again, like with anything game, you know, game design, there's no one rule, I think, and there are definite preferences. And of course, you can play with that, because sometimes that unpredictability or that kind of emergent behavior can be a really fun part of the game. I played The King is Dead by Piers Sylvester, second edition, not that long ago. And that is sort of a classic game for that in a way. You know, you only have 8 actions in the game. It's an area majority game. There are so many things can change in the game. You know, basically at the end of each round, a particular area is going to score. It scores forever, and it'll be won by a particular faction. But the players aren't the factions. No, each player is not a faction. They're just choosing which factions to support. But how it's determined which factions you're going to support is worked out throughout the game, and you have to make you know, a series of decisions that will get you towards that. The order in which the areas are scored can change. Obviously the placement of the different factions on the board will change as a result of players' actions. And it's also a very free-form game in that you don't ever have to use, you know, you just get 8 actions, and you could theoretically, I think, do them all in the first round of the like 7 rounds of the game, or you could choose to do them all in the last round, or you could have some other sort of mixture of that. And when you sit down and the game asks you, here's your hand of 7, 8 cards, what are you going to do? And you go, but all of this is going to just radically change before, you know, like I might make this move to support this particular faction, but then I have no idea what's going to happen. That, you know, it's sort of shrouded in the mist of memory. But because the game is so lean and is so focused on exactly that uncertainty and that tension, I'd say it works. So I think, you know, you have to kind of lean into that. If that's the kind of game you want to make, then really make that at the heart of the experience. And the reason it works so well is because it's so lean, because there's just nothing else around the game except for that tension and that sort of, you know, almost fog of war kind of thing. And you get this lovely crescendo. It also doesn't take that long. You know, it can't go that long. And even when it is asking you to make decisions that maybe you don't know the full impact of them, those decisions themselves are reasonably simple in terms of what you do, which helps the game kind of flow. And I actually think it's a rather wonderful design, actually, even though initially when I sat down, I was like, oh my gosh, like how can I decide? And actually I was very cautious. I didn't play many cards early on because you're just kind of working out what's going on. And then you realize, oh, actually they're you know, and the great thing is, again, the game's short enough that you get to the end, you're like, oh, actually I could have played that in a different way. So it's tricky. It's an interesting area, and that also makes me think of, you know, when you have these sort of collective decisions, this kind of emergence. In some ways, those are the greatest games because you feel like they can go in so many different directions based on even small changes in how people act very early on. So they're sort of unpredictable, but there's also sort of a beauty in that the game itself can vary so much without necessarily more content. It relies so much on player actions to provide that variety and that interaction, and you know, the variety. I think I said that twice, but yeah, I don't know if anyone has any other good games they think that kind of that either frustrate them because they feel like that ask them to make decisions that they just don't know the full impact of, or that actually do lean into that and it works really well. You know, feel free to let me know in the chat, I guess. Yeah, so I mean that's sort of a quick look at the decision horizon and what it can be in game design. Is anyone planning any sort of, anyone going to play some games over the weekend? Anything people looking forward to? I'm not sure where I'm going to play. I need to work a bit on Monumental myself, and I'm looking at my shelf of games to see if there'll be something I might try. I still have Chronicles of Crime in Shrink that I feel like I should play as making all these kind of narrative games. Hi, Not Yet Again. Welcome. I like a small bit of ambiguity because it tips its toe in the pool of luck without having to be a full luck mechanic and skew away from giving control. Yeah, I mean, I think that relates back to this kind of idea of fuzziness. If there's always a little bit of luck, it means, you know, it stops you being able to fully math something out. And it actually gives you the kind of at least when I play these games, I feel like I get a free pass. I don't have to put that effort in because it's like, oh, I couldn't know it perfectly. I feel like in a way that's why things like roll and writes, for example, are so popular. That you know, the best roll and writes are not completely random. That, you know, and that's why I think I like these kind of flip and fills. Something like Welcome To, because there is a distribution there. It's not completely random, so you can make somewhat strategic choices, but at the same time, you just have to make do with what you've got. You can make plans, but you can't math them out, you know, perfectly. So it's a nice, you know, it's a nice combination there, I think. Alex, my other question was, how do you usually carry? Oh, I should have said, yeah, ask questions away anytime. My other question was about how do you usually carry out playtesting, maybe pre and post COVID? Yeah, I mean, my life has changed, well, kind of because of COVID, but not directly because of COVID. I mean, I basically moved to Prague when COVID happened because I wanted to be with my fiance, and they, you know, you couldn't fly between the borders. So that change in my life has also impacted playtesting, apart from the whole having to stay at home. In the UK, you know, I was really lucky. We had a great playtest group. We'd meet once a week in Cambridge, and we had a good core group of at least 5 or 6 people that generally come every week, and like more people who might come, you know, less frequently, but would still come, you know, at least once or twice a year. So that was fantastic. And you could normally, you know, we'd be kind of 3 or 4 hours, and you know, you could usually play 1 or 2 of your own games as well as playtesting other people's games. So that was really great. And on top of that, I would often, you know, meet up with people like Brett, personally, just the 2 of us, and work on some games to you know, to work on our projects together and play test, you know, just the 2 of us and things like that. So that was really good. But yeah, post COVID, it's a lot harder. And the simple fact is, I've just done less playtesting is basically it. I've certainly made fewer games. A certain number of the games, especially these kind of narrative games, playtesting is a bit different. It's more like problem solving, and obviously the same people can't playtest them. So it's done a lot more in collaboration with the publisher. So, you know, I don't have to do as much playtesting myself. I playtest a little bit with my fiance, and there was a good playtesting group here. I mean, there still is a playtesting group in Prague. We can't meet right now, but you know, we haven't been locked down all the time. So, you know, I was able to still have that kind of weekly group, or once every 2 weeks. But definitely use Tabletop Simulator a lot more now. Getting used to that. It just as much as for playtesting as it is for collaborating. So often when I'm working with collaborators now, we do it through Tabletop Simulator and Skype. And in a way, kind of getting used to that has freed me up to work with people from all around. So, you know, I'm working with a few French designers at the moment, working with English designers, people from the US, and yeah, it just means that you can work the same way across all of that. Yeah. Paul's going to be playing Anno 1800. Well, I hope it goes well. Who are you playing against for Anno? I'll be finishing the Anno solo video this weekend and playing Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective on Sunday night. Oh, great! I shall. Yeah, good. Sounds like a good weekend. Rob's going to try out playing the Crew on BGA this week. Oh, okay. I didn't know that the Crew was on Board Game Arena. I feel like it's something I haven't. I don't. Does it work very well with 2? I'm sort of holding off playing it here because I feel like it works better with more 3 or 4. But maybe if it's on BGA, I could try it. I could see that could be quite fun. Manuel has a chance to relearn and play Brass Lancashire this weekend. Okay, great. Yeah, I quite enjoy. Yeah, that's that. What, you know, when I don't know what. One day I have to do something, talk about Brass. It's something that still I haven't played it that many times, but I really do love it, and I still haven't found many games that emulate something in that design about this sort of this player-controlled economy. I guess that you have to kind of react to how other players are choosing to specialize, and if they need a lot of coal, and you should build things that make coal, and that kind of push and pull is really lovely in the game. So I hope you enjoy your play of it. And yeah, thanks to Paul for the video as well. Oh, great. Okay, so Paul's got some info about Brass Lancashire. Yeah, just having a look at the. Okay, apparently not so good with 2. 3 is good. Yeah, I've tried it with 3 and with 4, but each time we've only played 1 or 2. I haven't gone through and done the whole 50 scenarios, and it's something I would love to try, because for me, trick-taking games are one of my foundational kind of gaming experiences. We used to play so much 500, which is a 4-player version of Euchre, sort of classic trick-taking, which I really love, and I still love. Don't get to play it much anymore. So, but taking that and putting this new kind of way is something definitely intrigues me. Fascinated by games that put much control of players' hand. Yeah, and Modern Art. I was also just watching the Dice Tower just put out a video about what's it called? The top 10 innovative games with Quinns as well from Shut Up and Sit Down, and they had QE on it, which is by Gavin Burnham, who's another UK-based designer. He's mostly known for making beautiful wooden versions, like not wooden versions, like they're not versions, games, which he handcrafts himself out of wood, and he only makes like 30 copies of the game, which he basically sells out immediately every Essen. And they're collector's items. I have one of them. Can I see it? I'll bring it if I can. Oh yeah. All right. Hold on. I'll get one. Need like some elevator waiting music or something. But yeah, he makes these beautiful, so he does all the woodwork himself in his shed. Cubico Games is the thing to check out. And so this one is called Jam Sumo, which is a sort of a dexterity game, which is made, it's this beautiful wooden board, which, he does all the work on it. And so you put dice and you flick them from the corners, trying to get through the central hole. There's also another version where all the dice start on the board and you have to flick other people's dice off the table, essentially. Really simple game, really great. And he's the designer of QE, and for those who don't know QE, it's based on quantitative easing, which is something I think governments and banks do to control the flow of money, or look it up on Wikipedia. I'm not going to do a good job here, but the game is amazing, and I'll check it out. It's had a new print from the same, I think they're called Board Game Tables, the same publisher who did On Tour, and it is completely in control of the players in the way it's essentially an auction. So it's a series of auctions. One player puts up an item for auction each round. They have to. They're the kind of auctioneer, and they set a price. The price can be absolutely anything, and then once they set a price, all the other players bid. In this game, you'll either bid 0 because you don't want it, or you'll bid higher than the starting price because you do want it. There's not much point to have a non-zero bid, which is less than the starting price. They secretly give in those bids into the auctioneer, and then the auctioneer determines who's won that auction, essentially. So, but the interesting thing is, whatever the winning price of the auction was is written onto the thing that was won. Everything's dry erase boards, but is kept secret. And it's given to the player who won the auction without showing the price. So the interesting thing is you have a guide on what the price was, because, for example, if I'm the auctioneer and I say it's $50 and somebody else wins it, then you know that they won it with something more than $50, but you don't know exactly how much it was. And the rule of the game is that you get points for winning things, essentially, in set collection, with the twist that at the very end of the game, whoever spent the most money on the things that they bought from the auctions automatically loses. And of course, you don't know how much everybody spent because it's all kept secret until right at the end. And you get this amazing thing because, again, the prices can be anything. You can write literally anything you want, like $50, 1 million, anything. And, Alex, $1 million, yes. And you get like inflation happening in the game, because the moment somebody puts 50 and then someone else wins, they're like, okay, well, people are happy to pay more than 50. Okay, the next auctioneer says, I'm going to do 60, or maybe I'll do 90, or and each game plays out in quite a different way. When you play it again with the same people, you're approaching it in a different way. And again, that's completely from the actions of the players. And it's also a really easy game to understand, even if it's not easy to play well. I think I don't have a winning strategy on it. So yeah, QE is the game to check out. Check it out on BGG. I'll take off this banner, which has been here for a while. Yeah, QE is a bit like High Society, where everyone has limited cards. Bonk is a good way. Yeah, I mean that's why I like Gavin. I mean, Gavin is a really incredible designer in that. I don't think he's not a designer that sort of he's aware of the hobby, but it's not his focus. He wouldn't. I don't know if he would necessarily describe himself as like even a hobby gamer. So he comes at designs from sort of a right angle almost, and he comes up with these really quite brilliant things. A really huge variety of games. But they're always really, really interesting ideas. He's got a new sort of area majority game where you actually have to like drop the cubes. You're parachuting cubes onto a board, and you're trying to obviously target a particular territory because that's where you want to drop them, but they might drop into other territories. And then there's this really cool sort of bluffing thing for fighting, and yeah, it's great. It's not. I don't think he's really active on social media so much, but definitely check out his games on Board Game Geek and Cubico Games with a K. So CUBIKO is his company. Yeah, and Rob's right. He's also one of the nicest guys you'll pretty much ever meet. If you ever go to Essen in the future, seek him out somehow. He normally has a stand, but it's like usually on the corner of somebody else's stand. And if you see him, like even by Thursday afternoon, he'll already not have any games left to sell. You know, he'll just have a few to show off, because the same people turn up every year because they're collecting all of his games. Because for some of them, he'll only make 30 of them. Forever basically. Paul said, play tested Fog of War and his brain exploded. In a good way or a bad way? Yeah, that can definitely happen sometimes. And yeah, I mean, not all of his games are my cup of tea. And you know, one of those things about having a big variety of games is that, you know, you're not a great predictor. If you like one of them, you'll like another one. But I think QE is one of these, like, almost like the Mind, actually, in that it's something so clean, so clear, that, you know, you would never arrive at from iterating from other games or seeing what else is out there on the market. It just kind of, you know, comes not fully formed, but it's this amazing idea. Yeah, so that was a brief diversion into Cubico games and things like that. But yeah, and it reminds me, I miss that kind of community. Like, Gavin was always a fun person to see, and at London playtests and things like that. So yeah, that's obviously you know, a big change with lockdown and everything, that COVID times, that don't get to see these people, no Essen and things like that. Yeah, so yeah, if anyone has any other, yeah, I'd love to, should make a list of like these kind of free form, completely sort of player driven games. I can't think of, you know, if I was prepared, I would have a good list. Yeah, but they're really interesting games design. I think at some point I probably had a list of like games that you should check out. I hesitate to say that like games every designer should play, but at least you should. I think knowing about them is useful to have in the back of your head. You never know when it might be useful. So yeah. But if anyone else has any other questions or anything, just chuck them in the chat. I think it's coming up on the hour, and I probably will keep roughly the hour this time. I'm a little slightly exhausted after, you know, you get this rush of trying to prepare for these various work meetings and things, and when you get it done. But it's kind of nice to relax with, and it feels like the process of streaming is a bit more relaxing now. I'm not as nervous beforehand and things like that. So yeah, I also should say that Wolfgang Lütke from Cosmos has agreed that he's going to come on, and I'll interview him for the stream. That's going to be sometime in December. It'll be one of the Mondays in December. I'll definitely advertise it once I've got the right time. So let me know here or on Twitter if you have questions you'd like me to ask Wolfgang. He's worked on pretty much every Cosmos product for like the last 20 years or something. For example, definitely like on Exit, he worked on. He was one of the main people. I saw he developed Lost Cities. I'm not sure if he was involved in Catan, but I expect he probably was. And you know, it's just been around the industry for a really long time on some of these big games. Hey Henry, how are you going? Welcome. Yeah, I know it must be hard. I'm guessing you're based in the States, and maybe the timing is always a bit tricky, but glad that you're able to join, and hopefully it was interesting or useful. You know, I never really know that, you know, if my ramblings make any sense, but you know, once I figure out again, wants to have some nice like chill pop music in the background, then it can just be one of these relaxing kind of experiences. Okay, you're in Philadelphia. Okay, so it's not too terrible, but yeah, I'm glad. Well, thanks very much for joining anyway. But yeah, it's I think we'll see what games I get to play this weekend. I hope everyone gets to play some nice games, or catch up. I know, I guess for everyone, it's still tough times, but I hope that that games can give you a bit of escape from all that, or check out some other streams. I've been enjoying Michael Fox's does some Let's Plays on the weekend. I don't know what he's playing. Thanks very much. Thanks for dropping by. Enjoy your meeting. Hope it goes well. Thanks very much, Josh. Yeah, I'm glad that that the ramblings are not too irritating. Maybe I could also show some of these logic puzzles sometime on stream if people are interested. So yeah, I'll see you in the chat tonight, Paul. I will definitely drop by. So just a reminder, if anyone's interested in seeing Paul's playthrough of Anno 1800, that will be 7 p.m. UK time, so it's in roughly 2 hours. So check him out. We can try and raid someone. I never know really how this works. However, everybody I know, I stream at a sort of weird time, so I don't think I can't really see anybody. Does anyone have a suggestion if we should raid anyone? But otherwise, well, maybe just drop it in the chat or let me know. As always, you can catch me on Twitter at WiseGoldfish. So, if you want to chat at a different time or any suggestions for streams, etc., just let me know. But otherwise, I will bid you adieu. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll be back on Monday, same time, 5 p.m. Maybe I'll be more prepared with some topic, but we'll see. If there's something you want me to talk about, let me know. And take care, everyone, and stay safe, and see you soon. Thanks very much. All right. Cheers. Bye.